This is madness.
No trainers.
Trainers are cool,
Trainers are cool,
so you're gonna let us in?
so I'm gonna let you in.
Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we are going back, way back there, to Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace on PlayStation 1. We got a story for why we're here on this set. So, eBay, this is the place I go to buy typically my complete in-box experiences. I usually do so well in advance. I did so with Phantom Menace. The shipment was delayed, then it got lost in the mail. So unfortunately, I don't have a copy to put in my PlayStation, to put on the set, to put on the CRT. I can't sit at my CRT with it being blank. The reflection's awful. So I really got worked over here by eBay. If you're wondering why we're at a different set for this video, that's why. I appreciate your understanding. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about Phantom Menace because over on patreon.com/retrorevive, you got to vote for a game in the Star Wars franchise that I play for the first time. And the selection was Phantom Menace on PS1. This is a rare Star Wars games blind spot for me. You know, I played so many of them growing up, but the PS1, as many of you know, I didn't have growing up. So everything on that library pretty much I had missed outside of Spider-Man. So today we're here to rectify that mistake potentially, talk about this tie-in video game, and the reason we're doing so is because it's about to be May. It's Star Wars season. We got a lot of Star Wars content on the way, as we do every single May. Not only that though, but over on Retro Rewind, we talked about Phantom Menace in 2024, and what a film. So go ahead, check that out, link down below, subscribe while you're there, be a part of what we're doing here. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it. So, Phantom Menace, this has to be the most unhinged Star Wars game, the most reckless Star Wars game, the most out-of-pocket Star Wars game I have ever played. I am not exaggerating. There's 3 moments in particular that happened throughout my playthrough that I absolutely could not believe with this game. And it's funny because to me, after watching the movie and then literally firing this game up, not even an hour after I finished that viewing, this game could not be more in opposition of what happens in the movie in certain instances. So let's take one reckless example. I went to Gungan City, right? Like you do, Jar Jar Binks, you find him, you need to go ahead and forward a message to Theed. How do you do that? Well, let's use the Gungans and see if we can get to Theed a little bit quicker. So Jar Jar guides you down there, right? Following the movie. Okay, so in the movie, Jar Jar is threatened to be killed pretty much, but the Jedi offer to take him away and say like, hey, we'll take this problem off your head. We want Jar Jar with us. Okay, so in the game, what actually happens is Jar Jar is being brought to be executed, and Qui-Gon says to Obi-Wan, we can't leave him behind to get killed, so they make a whole level out of Gungan City. This is actually kind of cool in the game. You get to explore this place. To me, one of my favorite visuals of the movie is when they're swimming in and you see all of Gungan City. Like, it looks awesome to me. It's one of the standout visuals in my head whenever I think about Phantom Menace. Even if many people hate Jar Jar, the Gungans and whatnot, I thought it was a cool visual. So getting to explore that is awesome. Now, as you're going through this level, you have to find Jar Jar and free him from captivity. And you have to slaughter the entirety of the Gungan race to go ahead and save him. So there are parts where I'll walk up to a Gungan guard and he'll be like, no, you can't pass here. And you'll tell him like, hey, I'm looking for Jar Jar. Hey, just let me through, please. And he won't let you. And so what you have to do is cut him down. And eventually all the Gungans are going to start to attack you throughout this level. And it's funny because before all of this, Qui-Gon's like, do not resort to violence. I had to, though. There was no way through otherwise. I don't know if I can use the Force to convince people, because once I got to the end of the mission, I did end up finding where Jar Jar was captured. We'll talk about navigation in this game in a moment, but I finally find where Jar Jar is captured, and I tell him, you will release him. And the text was all in like a rainbow color, I guess suggesting I was using the Force. And he went, yes, I will, and released him, and that was the end of the level. Still, this game allowed you to slaughter the Gungans. Perhaps something that if you don't like Phantom Menace because of Jar Jar Binks would be mighty cathartic. So yeah, there's moments like that, which you'll see in this game, but there's also ones that I could scarcely believe. So the movie opens up on the Trade Federation ship, right, where you have Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan waiting, no one's showing up. They leave the room, blasters are firing everywhere, you fight off a bunch of enemies, bunch of droids, right? So I start to crawl through a ventilation shaft, and I find this area with a fan spinning around, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I don't know where to go. Now, I wasn't thinking here because I thought maybe I have to double jump across this thing. I don't know how far the double jump goes. I don't know if there's a button I gotta press. Spoiler, there was a button I had to press that I missed. So I jump and land inside this ventilation shaft, and Obi-Wan splits into, like, chop meat, dude. Like, he's a bunch of bits on the ground. It just didn't have the blood. I couldn't believe this. Like, you saw body parts everywhere. Like, they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to go that far, but they did. So there's just moments like that. And then I got to the end of the game, right? So at the end of the game, as you're approaching the Duel of the Fates, you play as Queen Amidala as she's forcing her way through the Palace of Theed. Okay, cool. Now, when you get there, there's one point where I was talking to one of the guards there, and I told them I just didn't have time for him right now. And this man straight up said, sometimes I wonder why we even voted you as queen. Like, just out-of-pocket dialogue, out-of-pocket gameplay mechanics, out-of-pocket allowing you to be chopped into bits. This game is literally out of pocket. Like, I don't know how to define it. I thought I was sitting down for a casual tie-in, you know, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man treatment I've become accustomed to. Like, okay, we're gonna have some deviations, but for the most part, this is gonna stay faithful to the film. But I was surprised with how many reckless moments appeared here in Phantom Menace on PS1. It was truly, unapologetically hilarious the whole way through. So above all else, above anything I wanted to talk about this game, mechanically, story-wise, I had to talk about how funny it was, how many laugh out loud moments I got out of it, because you just never expect it. And that was much needed, because this game kind of made me rage. It kind of pissed me off. At first, I was having a skill issue. So when you fire up Phantom Menace, I don't have my complete in-box experience. Games were built different back then. Nowadays, we get long-winded tutorial sections. Here's how you jump. Here's how you climb. Here's how you move, gamer. But back then, you were expected to read the manual. So not only is complete in-box vital for the process of showing you what the game was back then, it's also vital for me to understand the controls of the games, because there's nothing more humiliating than Googling how to block in Phantom Menace. So I'm playing the game, and I'm just getting hosed down by blaster bolts. And I'm thinking, something's wrong here. So I Google, how do you block in Phantom Menace? Because I don't have the manual with me. And it turns out there isn't a block button. There's no way. I'm just getting destroyed. And you'll see moments here where I'm just trying to get a health pack, and I'm getting destroyed constantly. Something's not right here. I look up the reviews. The reviews for this game aren't fantastic, so I'm understanding, all right, maybe this is just a thing they didn't think to add to the game. Long story short, there is a block button. You have to attack to block. And I kind of like this, because you have to time your swings with your lightsaber to knock the blaster bolts back, and that's your main form of offense, a good defense. I think this is really nice. The problem is, when I get to levels like the swamps of Naboo, you will get absolutely shot up. I mean, there will be tons of droids unleashing fire on you from every angle. It'll look like a bullet hell game. And you can only swing your lightsaber so fast, so there's no dedicated block button. You just have to swing and attack, and there's a degree of timing when it's maybe 1 or 2 droids shooting at you, but when it's 3, 4, up to 8 at one point, it's pretty terrible. Now, the game does not expect you to engage in every combat scenario. Like, there was one point I was playing as Amidala in the final mission, and when I ran into this one room, it was covered in droidicas. They had the bubble shields. Like, there's no way I'm gonna get through that. And it's because they're actually guarding a room nearby that has a white key card that I need to progress through the rest of the level. So there are times where you're just not supposed to engage. I imagine that was one of those. The problem is, the navigation in this game is so terrible that you'll run into these moments and not really know what to expect. In fact, the swamps in Naboo was a perfect example too, because not only was I running around completely lost on where to go, because some missions involve you like following Jar Jar in that instance, like, and you'll hear him yelling distance, like, over here. I'm like, where are you, dude? I don't have like a waypoint or anything. I can't see where you ran off. There was a million droids shooting at me. And sometimes droids will spawn on you. If you like run off screen and come back, they'll spawn right back in that same area. There's not enough health pickups to kind of justify the amount of enemies shooting at you. You'll get lost really easily. And this game has booby traps. Like in this Swamps of Naboo level, there were trees falling on top of me and killing me in multiple occasions. It was comedic in a sense, how bad I was at times at this game, but also how many times it just outright trolled me. As you've already seen, the game plays from a top-down perspective. This does not lend itself well to particular segments of the game. I think it works fine for the combat. But this game also has a degree of platforming, which kind of surprised me. But yeah, you're going to be jumping around. So at one point, you finally get to Theed, and you have to jump on these platforms and hopefully not fall in the water. By the way, spoiler alert for Retro Rewind, but there's a deleted scene I didn't know about where that waterfall in Theed actually was a scene of Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon like shimmying their way out of there. And so just going there in the mission and actually falling in the water, and I immediately thought of that deleted scene. But nonetheless, you're going to fall in that water because it's difficult to platform from this perspective, because you need to be able to see how high you are to properly platform, because you need to time your double jump right, which this game relies on. So the top-down perspective does the game very little favors. I was also incredibly surprised that this game had a dialogue system. I kind of like this. It was really interesting to be able to run around levels and communicate with different characters. So you'll be able to ask them all sorts of questions and kind of fill in the gaps that movies never quite explain. Obviously, as a tie-in game, there are major expansions to what the movie's trying to do, such as when you're escaping the Trade Federation ship. I mean, this is a moment that's kind of quick in the movie, but in the game, it's a whole level of crawling through multiple hallways and tunnels and ventilation shafts, and then getting to a point where Qui-Gon and you are in different parts of the ship and kind of coordinating things. Like, it's a pretty long level. And it also reminds me of how the cutscenes in this game are hilariously jagged, is how I would define it. Like, you would just see a little ripple with any type of model that moved on screen. It was kind of impressive for its time in a sense, but playing it nowadays, again, it's pretty hilarious to see, like, this was the big Star Wars tie-in video game. This game hailed from Big Ape Productions, and they made a lot of pretty interesting games. They made the Simpsons wrestling game on PS1. Their last game they ever made was MTV's Celebrity Deathmatch, which is a throwback. I actually forgot how much I enjoyed that show as a kid, but nonetheless, like, they were responsible for these types of games, and unfortunately, that was their last game. So when you think of like Celebrity Deathmatch and then Phantom Menace and then Simpsons Wrestling, it makes sense why so much out-of-pocket stuff made its way into the game. There were also cheat codes in this game. I have not used cheat codes in a while. Actually, I don't even remember the last time I used cheat codes, but I used them for this game because I also wanted to just see what it was like to explore every corner of this game without getting shot at. I think it was one of those rare games where the cheat codes are almost kind of necessary. I know some people will laugh at that, but seriously, I mean, there were times I was getting shot at by so many directions. Don't even get me started on the Darth Maul fight at the end of the game. This dude was like shooting lightning or grenades at me from a distance. Like, it was ridiculous. So I think sometimes the invulnerability isn't the worst thing in the world to have, and it allowed me to play the game a touch more comfortably without constantly reloading. You want to talk about save scumming? I mean, check out some of the gameplay that you're seeing on screen. The amount of times I'd pause, save, reload, pause, save, reload. I would continuously save because after every encounter, I was like, okay. Remember the last game I did that for was Baldur's Gate 3, which I think is forgivable because Baldur's Gate 3 has some intense, long-winded encounters that the second you win, you go, okay, save that bad boy up. Like, we cannot redo that. We don't know if we're going to make it out of there. I'm talking about like the Raphael fight. Like, dude, you got to be prepared, right? So when you finish that fight, you save. I was doing that constantly for every encounter. Like, there was one, for example, on the Trade Federation ship where I was running at these 3 droids constantly because I had like a shrivel of health. I needed the health upgrade. They were guarding it. I was trying to deflect the bolts, but again, when 3 enemies are shooting at you once, you can only deflect so many at a time, and I kept dying and dying and dying, and I would have had to restart the level, which is something I had to do initially. You know, I'm fighting through, and I'm spoiled by the autosave, so as I'm fighting through these levels, I die, and then I have to reload and do the whole mission over again. And that there will scar a gamer. And that's when you decide to start saving a ton. And when you still continue to die and the rage sets in, that's when you move to cheat codes. This is just the order of things. This is the way. So yeah, I gotta say that Phantom Menace caught me off guard. It really, really did. I was not sure if I was just expecting a simple romp, but to get such a comedic video game that was completely off the rails and also extremely difficult in the most old school way imaginable, was really fun. I don't know. It was an interesting first time playthrough, to say the least. So thank you to the patrons for voting on this one. You significantly lowered my quality of life by a couple percentage, but I'll forgive you. I love you guys. But nonetheless, let me know what you think of Phantom Menace down below. Again, if you want to be a part of what we're doing here with the Retro Alliance, you can go ahead and check out Retro Rewind, link down below. See our thoughts on the Phantom Menace movie to kind of celebrate the game as well as we enter Star Wars month. We'll have much more Star Wars on the way. I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts down below. Please do fire away. Other than that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace out.